Now, going over to the business blunder of the day, we have Detroit's Big Three versus the UAW as the negotiations heat up. Now, traditionally, the Big Three was known as the Big Three automotive companies in the United States, which used to be Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, because at one time they were the Apple of the United States. They had the best, most reliable cars. I know we're winding back the clock quite some time, since quality in not every vehicle, but in some vehicles are laughable to say the least. But it was the pinnacle of Detroit. Detroit used to be the richest, most successful city in the United States. That's how far ago this term comes from the Big Three, because they're all headquartered around Detroit. General Motors is downtown Detroit. I know at least Ford, they're over in Dearborn, a little bit north, I believe. And Chrysler, you have Chrysler, I think they're right around the corner. Needless to say, you understand now where the word comes from. Now, the business blunder, of course, comes from the UAW. Now, the UAW is the United Auto Workers. They are the largest union for, as it might sound, the automotive industry. Now, it's one of those issues where not every time, one of those things some people might say I'm anti-union. I would say most of the time it's disadvantageous to the business, the end user, and the employee to have that relationship where it's kind of like a divorce attorney. If you have a disagreement with your wife or your partner or husband, it's always best to go one-on-one and sharpen those communication skills, have those difficult topics, really talk about the situation and come to an agreement. The worst thing I would say is getting a divorce attorney involved. Or, heaven forbid, again, not all therapists, but like a therapist who inherently is going to take one person's side, unless they're a good therapist. Those are few and far in between. But once you have that divorce attorney, it always gets uglier. The discussions get more heated. The amount of money that you're bleeding, not just because you're losing more in the divorce, but now you're paying someone to rob you. Take money from you. So you have the attorneys, which are making money. They profit off the conflict. And in many cases, the UAW is no different than that. And it's also one of those issues where the UAW helps politicians, I would argue, more than the lower level employees who are trying to benefit from the benefits of what they perceive as a union. One of the best use cases is when President Obama was first running during the 2007 campaign to become president in 2008. One of the biggest contributors to his campaign was the UAW. So think of all the dues and the fees that the union is taking from the frontline workers, they're giving it to politicians. The theory is it's morally vacuous, but the politicians then give them lucrative contracts, such as the teachers' unions. It's one of those corrupt things that people really don't talk about because mostly corruption is focused on, mainstream media, what they do on the right side of the aisle. Personally, why not expose and put light on all of the issues on all sides of the aisle? But nevertheless, they have these issues for the longest time where they're donating more to politicians, increasing the cost of goods sold to the vehicle, and it's usually, again, these numbers average, but there are many estimates that the cost of a GM vehicle or a Chrysler or a Ford vehicle is about $2,000 to $3,000 more than what would be a vehicle made by a non-union company. Now, in terms of the culture of a union, which, again, unions, they really just incentivize tenure, not performance, more often than not, aka get paid to do, just stay there longest. They estimated during the 2008 bankruptcy of General Motors, one of the biggest contributing reasons was the union. It was the pensions, which are an outdated idea that used to be great, but there's not physically possible for most companies these days. The healthcare benefits to them, and then just unions in general. They crippled General Motors. They had to declare bankruptcy in 2008. They've done it. They've declared bankruptcy multiple times. But that person, I remember in an article when they're talking about the dues and the cost of goods sold. One of the articles in 2008, they were talking about to have a frontline unionized employee put a tire on a car, that person was making $68 an hour to put a tire on a car. And again, I don't know, again, obviously they went bankrupt in 2008, so it wasn't fiscally prudent to do that or sustainable, but they have a machine to do it too. That was another thing that blew my mind. So this person has a machine, like a glorified wheelbarrow with motors and engine stuff. So the machine, they take it, the machine picks up the tire, they click some buttons, it moves up, push the tire on, they click more buttons, and it screws all 5 lug nuts in at once. So it's already highly mechanized. So again, I'm not saying it's an easy job. Well, I would say it's easier than manually doing all that. But more and more of their jobs being offset and made easier thanks to technology. But they just want more and more money. The biggest issue with the unions is that I would also say on average, they only want the upside. When times get tough, they will fight tooth and nail not to give up a penny of their income. But when it's good times, they want to take all the profits so the company cannot reinvest into the business. Now, a couple of their demands, and again, this is a fluid negotiation, it's going back and forth. They want to have double-digit pay raises. They want a defined pension benefits for all employees. They want restricting the use of temporary workers. Some people call them pejoratively scabs. The people who are not unionized, if Mary Barr was permanent, they would hire them exponentially, increase that. They want increased pay time off. They want a 32-hour work week. A lot of people say pejoratively that the UAW is lazy. Well, if you talk to people in management, you've heard the stories where they sit around and they like to smoke. But they will move one. I remember, this is anecdotally speaking, I have some relatives who were in a manufacturing plant a couple years, quite some time, I think it was 90s. But they were saying in order to move a body, like for a vehicle body from one side of the factory to the other, they would have to have 2 written orders or 2 written requests. And they were having they had 3 guys sitting around the body. One guy would push it, but they wouldn't do it till the last minute of the day. So they would say that task took the whole day, when in reality, they had the one guy of the 3 who were assigned to the job move it at the very last minute of the day in 15 minutes. That's perhaps a good anecdotal, although a good metaphor for these unions. Now, the UAW president is quite vocal about his opposition and basically, in my opinion, making it a lose-lose situation. Now, the new president is Sean Fain, and he literally took the offer from Stellantis, which is the European conglomerate which bought out, it was Fiat, but they rebranded as Stellantis. They bought out Chrysler during the bankruptcy of 2008, and he threw the offer in the trash, literally. Now, in terms of marketing and a metaphor and being bombastic, that's a good way to get your message across. But they're complaining in these videos, and they have a lot of propaganda, marketing gear. And in the videos, they specifically say, oh yeah, General Motors, they made so much, they're making all these profits right now. We want more of these profits. Again, they want the upside, not the downside, not the risk. Now, of course, the issue that, again, they're also fighting EV adoption, which I'm one of those folks where I prefer every vehicle to have 3 pedals, also known as a manual transmission. Infinitely more fun, also more reliable in terms of you don't need to wait, software updates to have someone lock your car down from half a globe away. But it's one of those issues where they're starting to realize, oh yeah, times are going to get tough for the UAW because you don't need as many people to put together an EV in terms of the assembly. You're going to have more educated or more higher ed jobs where you're going to have software engineers, you're going to have to have really good engineering to put the physical components together, but those are people with college degrees plus. Now, the UAW realizes that, so they're going to see a decrease in those jobs. They're also worried that, oh, wait a minute, those battery plants that they're being made in the United States, which is good, they're making battery plants, but they actually, they're not unionized, thankfully. Because again, they need to keep these costs down and help the consumers. Now, I can't help but also notice in terms of reliability, guess what doesn't have a union? Tesla, which is the most American brand right now. If you look at cars.com, they did an evaluation of top 100 American brands and American vehicles, and they look at the assembly location that it takes place in the vehicle and the components, where the components made. Tesla and Acura had the top 10 between the different models that they carry. Tesla, that's not unionized. They actually give their employees stock, which gives them a huge incentive. So again, if I was the CEO of General Motors or any of these companies, I would tell the unions, would you rather invest in this company, but get rid of the unions, we'll give you stock and give you more of a active incentive to help grow the company and perform. Now granted, maybe them probably don't want that. They just want to sit back and collect an exponentially greater paycheck. But they're in a lot of trouble. Because guess what also doesn't have a union? Toyota. Honda. The most valuable and the most reliable car brands don't have unions. Now, many people also talk about Japanese culture and Kaizen, where they're actually incentivized if they see an issue on the problem with the vehicle. Anytime in the production, they're actually told and encouraged to bring that to your attention so they can fix it there. Other companies, like American automotive companies, they just say, we'll fix that at the end. Make a note. So there is also cultural differences between these companies as well. And there's a whole pride thing. I can't help but notice the most reliable vehicles are not made by unions. They're also cheaper because of that, in terms of they don't have the union dues. They don't have the union pay. So it's one of those issues where you're complaining, the unions at the UAW, complaining that GM, Stellantis, and Ford, they're making big profits right now. But that's going to be very temporary because guess what? They all want to go EV. That's going to cost them a huge sum of money. I mean, Ford made a profit for Ford Blue. Ford Blue is the traditional Ford that you and I know and love. The Ford Mustang, not the bastardized E-Mach, the Ford Mustang with 3 pedals and a V8. You have the traditional Ford internal combustion engine F-150. Ford Blue is doing great. Ford Blue, that division, is making huge profits. Guess what's on track to lose $3 to $4 billion this year? Ford EV, which I think they called Ford E or Ford Mach-E. Something they should get an F minus or maybe an F plus for marketing because it wasn't very catchy. And I would say I'm a pretty big gearhead, and even I don't remember it. So they're having these huge profits, but they're reinvesting back in the company as businesses should do, and they need to do to stay competitive. If Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors, really wants to get full EV by 2035, Cadillac, she wants to have full EV by 2030, they need to be putting every penny of that profit back into the company so they can reinvest and set up these huge engineering feats, not just the assembly. We're going to have massive machines. They're going to have to adopt some technology like Tesla. We have the Gigapress, which is a huge expensive machine, which does over time save you money, but it's a huge upfront investment. Anytime you make a new vehicle, that's why you see so few new vehicles being made. It's because the huge upfront cost. You have the stamping machines, so you have to stamp out the unique body panels, newer engines. But this is all those issues where they're being, in my opinion, they're being more short-sighted. If they really want to have a more collaborative approach, come to the table and understand you have a fluid dynamic situation where they're trying to compete with Tesla. And they've said multiple times, specifically Mary Barra, that they're cutting their costs. They got rid of a lot of the corporate staff or the staff inside the headquarters or Detroit. Because again, they're trying to compete with the competition, and the competition is fierce. I mean, exponentially growing. And it's competition. There's a lot out there, and I don't think a lot of them are going to make it, to be frank. Because it's a big risk. And again, the EV adoption rate is not at the point at which the government would like, and you're seeing a slower adoption rate of EVs. There are a lot of first-generation adoptions when it comes to any new technology, from laptops to cars. There are some people who will always pay more to be the first because they are very technologically driven. They perhaps see some social status from that. But it's one of those issues where those people already have it. Everyone who wanted an EV has one by now. In terms of the early adopters. What's remaining are the people who are questioning the longevity of EVs. Not just reliability, but is it going to last 10 years? No, not with the current battery technology we have now. That's why the best ROI, or if you look at a vehicle as having a return on investment, one of the best things you buy is just a good old Toyota Corolla. The best selling vehicle in history by number of units sold. Get a Toyota with an internal combustion engine. It'll last a quarter of a century and 1 million miles if you take care of it. That's not happening with an EV right now. They're glorified disposable smartphones. Just even as recently as 2 months ago, Mercedes is the first automotive company to say they're opening up a recycling plant, I believe over in Germany, where they can take back the old cars and try to get some of the precious metals. But even then, that car's not going to last 10, 15, 20 years. So again, a wise philosopher, much more smarter than me, Thomas Sowell said, there's no solutions, only trade-offs. And I don't think enough people are having those discussions around trade-offs. And these companies need to be scared to death of the union relationship. If they don't build and again, it's hard because you have this third party, I would say is adversarial by default. If they don't come to an agreement, this could cripple the companies. They could even put them out of business if they're not careful. So it'd be interesting to see, but I guess the business blunder is a long-term one. Really, I believe the key is to have a positive relationship with the employees before it gets to the point where they feel they've been taken advantage of, and they have to bring in a third party, they have to bring in someone who is just adversarial by default. And again, it's just increasing the cost for everyone. No, I don't see anyone happy in this situation. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here, but needless to say, it's a long-term one, but that has to be the business blunder of the day. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of August, so if you click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, don't forget to take the time to like and subscribe and comment. The comments help the channel grow and develop, and greatly appreciate them. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.